Hi, friends. Host Eric here, talking with famous people. I'm here with a full room, including a double arch admin. That's right. We've got both arch admins in effect: the United States domestic arch admin and the Norwegian arch admin. This one's a lot more familiar with me
Yeah.
than the Norwegian one. She sits on my lap. Well, Susie, that's a little close, okay? Come on. You need to sit over here. Jeez. So forward.
Not weird at all.
Anyway, okay, the topic here today is meaning of life. What is the meaning of life? People ask this as one of the big questions that people ask. Why am I here? What is the meaning of life? What is our purpose? The questions that religion and philosophy are supposed to solve, more or less, and or to a certain extent.
I don't think there's like a definitive answer for the meaning of life, though, because it's going to change on the basis of who's asking.
Not a definitive
Sorry.
answer for the meaning of life?
Yeah.
Okay, well, anyway, the topic of this video specifically is how different people evaluate, interpret, and think about, quote unquote, the big questions. What constitutes the big question for a given type, and what constitutes a differences between the way that people think of it. So, the one point about the big question is it is a sense that there needs that in the status quo there is lacking an explanation that is satisfactory or satisfying. Potentially, some people might interpret it the way Chloe does, that it's impossible to have a satisfactory or satisfying explanation of it. That there's no singular, holistic, meaningful way to understand existence that satisfies one to the extent that there is no big question anymore. And I think the fundamental reason for this is that all of existence is understood through the frame of intentionality. Everything we do or that is done or happens is related to either our own intentions or the intentions of others. So I think one more thing about the FETI versus TEFI split is an intentionality focus. Are you operating in the frame of the intentionality that is of others fundamentally? Are you fundamentally reactive to that intentionality? That's what TI, the intentionality of others thinking, represented in time objects is text, and FE, the intentionality of others perceptual management, at least somewhat objective in its ability to be parsed out by third parties, essentially third parties. That this distinction between whose intentionality are we operating against is perhaps one of the core differences between the two varieties of judging functions. So, where I'm going with this is that when you're dealing with big questions, what you're dealing with is the fact that there's a missing component of intentionality in your life, which is regardless of whether you're operating on the intentionality of others and learning about the intentionality of yourself, like me, whether you're operating under the intentionality of the self and learning about the intentionality of the other, like an INFP, for example, it doesn't matter. What you're lacking is your intended purpose. In other words, of all things in the universe, we have a clear reference point of to make things relatively absolute, we have a clear reference point of intentionality either in others or ourselves, generally for everything that happens or is. The one exception to that is our being itself, namely host Eric. What is host Eric's purpose, and who purposed him? Why is he? How does he link back to an external intentionality? You might say, well, the answer is very simple. I was purposed by Jane and David Strauss, who copulated and thereby generated the conditions necessary for my conception. Whereupon I immediately took up camp in the womb, started holding protests and campfire vigils, and generally started fucking shit up. Anyway, the point is, you could say that's where the intentionality lies. Of course, it wasn't intentional, right? They didn't say, let's have a host Eric. They said, let's have unprotected sex and see what happens. So, I mean, my parents were 35 when they had me finally, so I don't even know why it took them so long, if they were super on top of their shit or what, but who knows? Plenty of kids are not intended, and it doesn't stop them from existing. So where's the intentionality for my being, not just my existence? And if my being has intentionality, then what's my goddamn purpose and or destiny? And how will I know when I win? Because I want it to be a win-loss framework. Thoughts from the assembled personages. Let's start with Audra. She wasn't paying attention.
So I was kind of paying attention for a while. Um, so what is what implies the importance of finding external meaning? Like we're kind of accepting that as a warrant, like that's important.
Well, simply that it would
Well, I mean
be.
that would be, it's like there's a lot of possible explanations for adding meaning, but why is it important to find some sort of this external meaning of life? I mean the whole phrase is kind of
Well, my
difficult to
point is
define.
simply this: that for everything else I can think of, it links back naturally and intuitively to an intentionality. So there's a notable void, regardless of whether it implies we ought to fill it with anything. There is a notable distinction between one's own being purposeless, fundamentally, or as a secularist would say, is just sort of an evolutionary happenstance of your genes desires, your genes um, drive to reproduce themselves or something like that, you know?
So if there isn't, if you do assume an intentionality or useful intended use of human of the existence of what we call a living human, um, is that external intentionality important? Why is it important to the human? Does a tool or a thing with a use need to perceive or be aware of its use?
It's an
What
observed
is the
lack.
difference there?
That's sufficient to justify its filling. Like, why isn't there anything there? It's sufficient to try to figure that out. Why is the universe math not work? What's this dark matter shit? Is that really a thing? Why does the math not work? Is a sufficient reason to try to figure it out.
Okay, I accept that. Yeah, curiosity is an acceptable motivation. But
So,
it is it as is the relative importance on pursuing that curiosity what makes that particular curiosity so much more worth pursuing than others, because it does seem to get a little bit more
well,
attention.
it would seem to me that if there was such a thing that filled that thing, then there'd be a top level framework that all other frameworks would link into, and that that everything would then make sense through a central lens. The thing is, in the status quo, we have
Okay,
no predominant framework. Nobody does. People try to adopt one, which is obscene, but um, it's impossible to because the things are relative to other contextual things, and it's inter-framework relative absolutism, and we need a master framework. I feel like it does because then everything would link back
so,
together and it all makes sense. For example, how do I know I'm doing the right thing if I don't know what the goal is? I don't have a criterion. There's no life criterion. There's criteria for everything else we do, but there's no life criterion.
so it's in search of a theory of everything, so it's not actually the particular space that's important, it's what this filling the space would result in theoretically.
Well,
So
I
it's
think
actually there's a greater motivation behind it.
criterion-free
That makes
existence
sense.
is impossible. Existence is to set criteria. To exercise free will is to exist in some sense, I think is true. But the thing is, we it therefore feels like we're constantly fighting low-level battles that don't that wash out in the larger scheme of things because we're failing to address this this gaping void for a top-level framework.
So are you looking for a universal criterion, or do you think it's relative to the perspective of the seeker of the criterion?
I'm looking to. I think the best we could do is deductively validate the necessity for top level criterion while also deductively validating the impossibility of knowing anything about it specifically, except that it's a top-level criterion.
So it's universally applied, regardless of the observing perspective. Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm saying each individual needs a top-level
This
criterion.
criterion would be.
And now, it doesn't matter if the top-level criterion
Okay,
is
so
universalizable or not.
it is relative to the perceiver then.
Right. Well, I mean, the thing is, it doesn't actually matter if the top-level criterion is universalizable, self-evident across the board or not, or whatever. It matters that it is that indisputably there is a top-level criterion to reference sub-criteria against, even though you don't know what any of the specifics of the top-level criteria are. It allows you to construct a likely top-level criteria based on assembling the sub-criteria into a whole. So, for example,
you cut out there. So
all right. Well, look, it's like this. It's talking with famous people. It's talking with famous people.
There was like a point, and then it went away.
It's like this. Is talking with famous people something I get credit for? Is it something I've been tasked externally with doing, or something that just accidentally happened, or something I get blamed for? That's an important question to me. It feels like
Would
it
it
just
not make
accidentally
sense that
happened,
it
except
just
there's too much
happened?
magic associated with it, so it must be from an external magic power. Obviously, Hadra, that's the only logical conclusion, is magic.
I don't find it to be the only logical conclusion, if not necessarily possibly a reasonable theory framework. But
Heathen!
I get distracted with something else.
Hmm?
I get distracted with something else. I was wondering, like, what the topic changed to.
Spacey, you got anything to say?
it's really hard to discuss when you're lagging at saying the words and then like pause.
There's a lot of people in here right now, and I'm recording on my end. If Susie would record on her end, wants to record this thing on her end, look, the audio is going to come out fine on my end. I don't know if you guys can hear me or not. I'm going to stop this one as part one, and then we'll try to
Yeah, it will be
restart it
fine.
with Susie recording instead of me because my computer isn't that strong. Thanks for watching Talking Fin People. Don't forget to eat plenty of cheese. And remember, God loves you. Kimberly, I can give you 10 minutes. What am I giving you 10 minutes for? Oh, wait. Oh, you're going to work. Right. Then why am I giving you take as much time as you want? Oh, 10 minutes. I see what you're saying. That's, hey, communicate. Can you give me 10 minutes? I normally think of saying, like, can you leave me alone for 10 minutes? She's saying, can you spend time with me? An exact opposite thing. All right. Talk to you later, everybody. Don't forget to eat plenty of cheese.